Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Searching for a Savior by UnicornsThatGamble. After Ace becomes a well-known pirate, Fusha village is taken over by a celestial dragon, aiming to make the whole town a slave market. Luffy, being labeled as a devil for being related to the notorious Fire Fist Ace, barely escapes with his life. Now, he has only two goals in mind: find Ace and save the village. Huge shout-out to all the warlords of this channel. You know who you are. Want to stand among legends? Join the channel membership and show your support. Adios.
Finally is all Luffy can think. He runs through town, dodging adults and children alike doing some shopping. Luffy's eyes are fixated on the medicine shop at the end of the road. Panting harshly, he enters the building. As soon as Luffy is inside, he slams the list of medicine on the front desk. The clerk jumps in surprise and gasps softly. It takes her a moment to shift her attention to the paper and she picks it up delicately. With a final look to Luffy, she turns around and goes in the back room to fetch what he needs. Finally catching his breath, Luffy sighs and sinks on a nearby chair. He sighs again, more loudly this time, and stares at the ceiling blankly. His arm is throbbing, and so is his head. Luffy also notices he's significantly weaker, like when he first got the shackles strapped on. The ride had lasted longer than he originally thought. He was stuck on that boat for an extended week with his constant full body ache. Well, Luffy thinks, nothing a little medicine can't fix. He looks around the shop to keep his mind off the pain. There isn't that many people in the store, mostly just gossiping old ladies and the occasional mother. Beside the shelves nearby, Luffy can hear the quibbling of two old men. "Did you hear about Teller Island, I mean?" the one with glasses says to his companion. Luffy's attention peaks. The other grunts. "How could I not? Especially if it's our island this hooligan might be coming after next. This person must be daft if he's messing around with Whitebeard's affairs." The companion shakes his head. Even though it's been a week, everyone is still on their toes about this. The town hall has even posted guards around the flag just in case the attacker comes by. So they have guards, Luffy notes. And looks like word is spreading quickly too. He feels happy for his achievement, but hopes with all his might that Ace's crew will forgive him. The man adjusts his glasses on the tip of his nose. The young these days. Grandpa, Luffy hears twins scampering and turns his head to look. There are two young boys, around 10 and 7, with big grins plastered on their faces. They are both dirty all over with twigs sticking out of their hair at all angles. A pang hits Luffy's chest, but he doesn't know what it is. "Grandpa, guess what? Guess what?" the younger one says energetically, bouncing on his toes. The glasses man leans to his friend with a smile. Speaking of the young, he whispers, making the listener chuckle. He turns back to his grandson. "What is it, little Henry? Did you and Lucas catch the mystery creeper in the waterfall cave? Or was it the Cliff River?" "It's the river in the cave, Grandpa." Lucas corrects, obviously annoyed. "And it wasn't a mystery creeper. It was a water snake." "I swear, Grandpa, your memory is getting worse and worse. No wonder you spend all your time in this sick bay." Lucas. Their grandpa's friend scolds. "Don't be so rude to your grandfather or this establishment." Lucas just grumbles and looks away. Henry looks like he is going to explode. "Anyway, if you are all done talking, we found a good hiding spot to see if the guy is going to attack our flag. You know the guy, the one that got Teller Island?" His grandpa raises a hand to stop his grandson's ramblings. "Yes, Henry. I'm aware who it is. But you two shouldn't be fooling around such business. It's very dangerous." "But Grandpa, I don't want to hear it. I expect better of you two, Lucas," he says, looking at the elder brother. Lucas just mutters something offensive under his breath. "What was that, Lucas?" "Nothing, Grandpa," he says with fake innocence. "Come on, Henry, we've got better stuff to do than hang around this place." They run outside and the old friends follow behind them. "You're not leaving yet. Get back here or I'm going to talk to your parents," the grandpa yells, shaking a fist in the air. Luffy watches until their figures disappear from view. He stares at the vacant spot until well after they are gone. Allowing the numb feeling into his body, Luffy lets it spread and he zones out. The crunching sound of a paper bag makes Luffy's senses return. He looks down, concerned about the large pain in his chest. Only this time he knows what it is as he stands to get his medicine. Envy. That'll be 70 Baileys, says the clerk, tapping her long painted nails on the wooden surface. Luffy rummages through his pocket. Taking out the proper amount, he realizes with a sigh he doesn't have many Baileys left. The woman takes the money, eyeing him suspiciously. But Luffy doesn't care, he's already walking out the door. When the sunbeams hit his face, Luffy yawns loudly and stretches his arm. The ship had docked mid-afternoon and he slept the entire trip. It is now late afternoon and he needs something to eat before taking down this flag. He looks over to the Jolly Roger waving strongly near the port. The guards aren't directly beneath the pole, but they are a bit spread out around the area. Each one of them is making polite conversation with passerbys, but Luffy sees their eyes occasionally flick back to the flag. The town this time is more barren than the others. The houses and buildings are all made of creaky wood with some on really high stilts. It kind of reminds Luffy of some sort of cool jungle village. With a moment to himself, Luffy takes his medicine with a gag. He never gets used to the bitter taste, but his energy immediately returns. Glancing off to the side, Luffy sees a newsstand with the town paper. Squinting his eyes to make out the title of the front page, Luffy mumbles it aloud. Will our flag be next? You betcha? Luffy spins around to the two children he had spot previously in the shop, Lucas and Henry. Henry, don't just go up to strangers. Lucas scolds. Henry looks up at Luffy, disregarding his brother's warning. We're going to catch him when he's just about to attack. Look, Henry points to a tall tree just across the street from the flag. We're going to be just like superheroes. Don't tell him everything, idiot, Lucas yells again, flicking Henry on the forehead. Henry pouts and rubs the sore spot. You're just bothering him with all your babble. Shuggy. They both turn and are surprised to see Luffy with stars in his eyes. Superheroes are so cool. They both blink in disbelief. But Henry quickly jumps next to Luffy and rubs a finger under his nose arrogantly. That's right. And we're definitely going to be the best heroes ever when we catch him. A large growl makes them all silent. Luffy holds his stomach embarrassingly. Oops, got to go get something to eat. Henry smiles and holds out a fist. Okay then. My name is Henry and this is my older brother Lucas. When we meet again, Lucas and I will be heroes. Luffy chuckles and bumps his fist against the tinier one. Good luck catching him, he says, totally forgetting he's the one they're after. See ya. Wait, we didn't get your name. Lucas yells when Luffy has already jogged a fair distance ahead. Luffy, he responds, still waving. Then he turns around and jogs into the busier area of the jungle town. A nice feeling settles in his stomach as Luffy slows to a walk. By seeing the boy's determination, it makes him want to work extra hard to get to his own brother. Luffy exits the restaurant into the warm night. He swishes a toothpick side to side in his mouth, trying to get it in between his teeth. Since his earnings had reduced to a bare minimum, Luffy had sung in the restaurant. He earned his food in Bailey's and left with a cheerful word from a few citizens. Luffy honestly doesn't mind getting into this little routine. He always likes music and smiles, so this isn't all that bad. Spitting the toothpick out the side of his mouth, Luffy turns his head up to look at the many twinkling stars. I wonder if Ace is looking up at these right now. He ponders. Or Makino. Luffy frowns, his face going into uber serious mode. Which just looks like a strong pout. He needs a faster way to take down that flag. The guards are sticking to the pole like glue and are not lead a clear view of the flag from where he is standing, but also the tall tree across from it. I hope Lucas and Henry get that bad guy, Luffy exclaims mentally, again forgetting who they are after. The flickering of a flame grabs Luffy's attention. He looks over to a lone villager lighting one of the many large torches scattered around town. Luffy eyes the matches in his hand as the man struggles to get the flame going. When the torch bursts to light, he drops the remainder of the match into it. Finished with the job, he places the box in his back pocket and walks away. An idea starts to form in Luffy's mind and he creeps behind the unsuspecting citizen. Too easy, Luffy thinks, and he swipes the pack without being noticed. Stuffing it in his pocket, Luffy looks around for something that can catch on fire easily. Suddenly, Luffy remembers the newspaper stand from earlier today. In a few short minutes, he's near the shop. There's a woman packing up for the night, putting the papers away in boxes. With the same amount of difficulty as before, Luffy sneakily takes a newspaper and speed walks away. Now for the rock. Luffy heads off towards the port. When he arrives, Luffy jumps down from the docks onto the cold sand. He immediately begins his search with only the moonlight as his guide. While looking at the ground, he completely misses the sign in front of him until he smacks right into it. Gah! Luffy cringes, rubbing his head. What's the big idea with this sign getting in his way? It's too dark to make out the writing, so Luffy takes the box of matches out of his pocket and sticks it in his mouth. He pulls out a match and strikes it against the rough surface, igniting a tiny flame on the tip. With the box still held between his teeth, Luffy holds the small light up and discovers that the sign is a chart of incoming and departing ships. He can't believe his luck. It'll just go on. This one, there's a merchant ship scheduled to leave a half an hour from now. All of a sudden he hears a crack in the bushes. He spins around to look, but drops the match in the sand. Luffy curses softly. After placing the box back in his pocket, he bends down to get the match but finds something else. It's a perfect rock. The match flickers out but it's quickly forgotten. Luffy plops on his backside and takes the newspaper out of his cloak. With some struggle, he manages to wrap the rock completely in the paper. Ammo complete. Luffy grins, proud of his creation. The cracking resumes and Luffy shoots up from his spot. He gets in a defensive stance and glares at the forest up ahead. I bet it's a rabbit again, he thinks, annoyed. But this time there's red eyes glowing in the bushes, and that growling is definitely not his stomach. Slowly the animal steps out into the moonlight, its massive muscles rippling with every step it takes. Luffy glares at the wolf. He can take this guy no big deal. Even if his arm is down for the count, he's got another and 2 legs to battle with. Bring it on, he yells and takes a step forward. But there is more rustling behind the predator and 2 other wolves emerge. Their mouths are foaming and their fur is standing on end. Crap! Luffy mutters. 3 is a lot more than 1. So when the first springs right at him, he swings a fist straight into his nose. The wolf barrels back into the other 2, knocking them off their paws. Luffy makes a break into the forest hoping to get cover in the dark undergrowth. But the wolves have great noses, and soon he can hear their panting behind him. A sudden howl from one of them makes Luffy jump a little and he glances back. Yikes! There is one literally at his heels trying to get a good bite of his ankle. Luffy kicks his foot out and catches the predator in the eye. It swings its head to the side but continues pursuit. Luffy turns his head back to the front but is startled to see the 2 wolves jumping at him. On a split-second decision he ducks downward, letting the 2 sail over his head and land in a tangled heap. The 2 wolves start scrabbling at each other, as if they didn't want to share a meal. They both leap at each other and claw at each other's throats. Luckily they're completely distracted from the chase. But Luffy is distracted too. He forgets about the 3rd wolf in that moment and it takes the opportunity to close in fast. He screams in agony as the sharp teeth sink into his leg. The wolf pulls at the flesh, trying to rip it off. Luffy kicks at its face with his other foot but the animal does not let up. Get off! He mumbles, eyes shadowed. The wolf is biting harder and Luffy scrunches his face in pain. Get off, he repeats, louder this time. But the wolf continues, only focusing on getting its meal. Get off, Luffy shouts. Energy ripples through the air, rustling the leaves and courses through everything in the vicinity. Then the oddest thing happens. The wolf stops biting and attacking altogether. Instead it fixes its now wide and fearful gaze on Luffy, then passes out on the spot. Luffy is left a panting mess, propped up on his elbow. He watches the wolf for any signs of consciousness, but it merely twitches occasionally in its sleep. Looking past the wolf he observes the 2 others, but they are in a similar state as their friend. Luffy doesn't dwell on what just happened. Instead he pushes himself up to a sitting position and examines his wound. He pokes it experimentally and hisses. It's a nasty one, but it's nothing he hasn't received before back on Dawn Island. Luffy rummages through the paper bag on his side and pulls out his bandages. He wraps it around his leg, albeit messily, and secures it by pulling it tight. 2 hands would be great to tie a knot right about now. Luffy mutters. Scooting over to a tree, Luffy places his hand on the rough bark and pushes himself up on 1 foot. He places his injured leg on the ground delicately, testing its weight. The leg stings a little, as expected, but he can still walk pretty well on it. A sudden flash of light has Luffy blind for a moment. He brings his arm up to block the brightness, but it's gone as fast as it came. Luffy watches the space where the light had come from. In the distance he can make out people hurrying around in a frenzy. Wait, they're definitely people, but they're also clowns? Immensely curious, Luffy decides to check it out. He glances at the wolves one last time, then hurries away before they wake up. The closer Luffy gets to the beach, the brighter his surroundings become. Soon enough he can walk without stumbling on random twigs and roots. Luffy reaches the edge of the forest and gapes. There is a pirate ship, but it is much larger and cooler than any of the others Luffy has seen. Not only that, but there is indeed clowns carrying boxes and chests of gold onto said ship. It is one of the most awesome things Luffy has laid eyes on, and he marvels at it all. Are they performing pirates or something? Maybe they're nice guys. When a man with checkerboard hair walks by, Luffy is about to talk to him, but stops when he sees the 6 guns strapped under his jacket. Or maybe they're not. Luffy settles behind a bush and watches them work. What Luffy doesn't understand is why they are docked completely around the bay and far from the port. It's a really long way from town and such an inconvenience. Luffy is distracted from his thoughts when a clown with a very large shiny red nose smacks one of the crew. What did I tell you about going into town? If someone catches sight of us and tells Whitebeard, we'll be flashily killed. He shrieks. The crew members around him shiver in fear. I'm sorry, Captain Buggy, the subordinate stutters. But we were running low on confetti cannons, and I thought they were necessary, sir. Buggy rubs his chin in thought. They are important for our normally flashy entrances. Fine. You're lucky I'm such a good captain, or you'd be dead by now. The wimpy man falls to his knees and kisses the ground before his captain. Thank you, Captain Buggy. You're truly the best captain in all of he sees. Course I am. Now get back to work, Buggy orders. Aye aye. He scampers away and a man with a half-shaved head walks next to his captain. Captain, do we really have to go to another Whitebeard-protected island? I mean, 1 is risky, but 2 seems to be pushing it. We have to Kabaji. We didn't find the materials we need to rebuild the figurehead, and the next closest island is that one. Buggy responds. But Captain, enough Kabaji. Even if Whitebeard shows up, I'll show him just how powerful the Buggy crew just is. Yes, he'll cower at our strength, he shouts. The crew cheers in response. So does that mean we can dock closer to town when we get there? No way. I mean, we should stay away from the port just to keep the citizens from panicking. You know. Just in case they're too afraid to give us what we need. Buggy trails off weakly and cowardly. Suddenly he coughs and his voice goes back to its loud and boisterous self. Anyway, I don't want to have to spend another second here. Just load up the things we stole off the island, quickly. Aye aye, Captain. The crew chants in unison. Luffy, on the other hand, has his eyes trained on the large lion playing with a ball the size of a small car. He laughs when it stumbles over the toy and rolls on its back. His laughter eventually dies down and he wipes the tears from his eyes. That was hilarious. Now what did that clown do? I thought I heard him say something. Luffy hums and racks his brain, but he soon gives up. Oh well, I guess he didn't say anything. Luffy turns away from the beach and goes back into the forest. He is reluctant to leave the cool clowns, but he needs to destroy the flag before his boat leaves. Once Luffy has made fair distance between himself and the pirates, he walks the rest of the way on the beach. Didn't forget about you, he exclaims mentally, taking the paper-covered rock off the ground where he left it by the sign. Now for the hard part. Luffy sneaks beside a building and peeks around the corner. The pole holding the flag is at the center of the clearing. There are 4 guards, each one looking either north, east, south or west. They're all holding guns against their chests, ready to swing them into action at any moment. I need a good distraction, he resolves, pulling up his hood. Luffy scans the area when his eyes land on one of the big tiki torches lined along the street. As soon as the guard nearest to him turns away, he slinks past and hides behind the torch. Here goes nothing. Luffy takes a few steps back, then body checks the tiki. It wobbles a little, but doesn't tip over. So Luffy tries again and again until the rocking becomes unsteady. Do you guys hear that creaking sound? A guard asks his comrades. They all strain their ears to listen. But it's too late for them as the torch is already teetering over to the next one beside it. There is a large boom when the collision happens. It causes the second torch to lean over and hit the next in line like a domino effect. What Luffy didn't plan for is all of them to catch on fire. A circle of fire is created and people run out of their homes to escape the flames. The guards abandon their posts and go for the hoses to quell the fire. Luffy takes advantage of the distraction and places his rock on the ground. He pulls a match out of the box and holds it next to the flickering flames, watching as it catches on fire. Luffy takes a deep breath and focuses. This is going to be difficult, he can't mess up. Quickly, Luffy lights the rock on fire and throws the match away. He covers his hand in his cloak and grabs the flaming rock. With a hiss of pain, he throws it at the flag with all his might. The rock barely skims the side, but it's enough as the Jolly Roger catches on fire. Luffy watches the flag turn to ashes as he blows on his burnt hand. Having one arm really sucks. Henry. Luffy looks up behind him to the tall tree. Hanging from a high branch is none other than Henry. Lucas is at the base of the branch, desperately trying to reach his brother. Below them is the fire and smoke, slowly climbing upwards. Help! Henry cries, struggling to hold on. Quick as a snake, Luffy runs towards them, but a sudden burst of flames blocks his way. Damn it! He curses, covering his mouth to filter out the smoke. Henry is still dangling helplessly by his fingertips. Every time Lucas tries to reach out, the weight makes the branch bend closer to the fire. Luffy looks around for something to assist him. Then, he sees the men grabbing hoses and drenching buildings away from where the children are. Oi! Luffy yells, running towards them. Several men turn to him, but they keep the hoses running. They need help. The fire is too strong over there. Luffy points to the ailing brothers. Just as he does, the branch makes a sickening crack and both brothers scream. The branch bends sharply downward right above the flames, but stays intact. Holy Sea Kings! Men, aim your hoses over there while two of us go and rescue those boys. Without delay, the guards turn the water to the fire near the grand tree. Luffy runs to the edge of the fire, impatient to get closer. There is another crack and Henry screams as his hand slips off the branch. Though the fire has quelled a little bit, it's not enough to prevent damage. Everyone scrambles to catch the boy, but he is much too far for any of them to grab. Henry! Lucas yells desperately, gripping the wood so hard it draws blood. Luffy backs up a few steps, then sprints as hard as he can and leaps high in the air. He crashes into Henry mid-jump and they fly over the fire and into the forest. The cool vegetation feels like instant relief on their skin, but they keep coughing from the smoke. The light from the fire illuminates the dark forest, making clear visibility. Luffy groans and rolls over on his stomach. Not too far away is Henry, looking shaky but overall okay. Henry, Henry. Luffy looks over to Lucas as he slides next to his brother. He pulls Henry on his lap and looks him in the eye. Are you alright? He asks. Henry nods and shrugs out of his brother's lap. Lucas turns his relieved gaze over to Luffy. The change is instant as stone-cold fury takes over his features. We saw everything. You're the one that's destroying the flags. Luffy just stares at them from under his hood, expressionless. It's your fault. Lucas yells, balling his bloody hands into fists. You started the fire and put Henry in danger. Henry stands up and grabs at his brother's sleeve. But Lucas, he saved me when I fell, he pleads. Lucas's cold gaze does not waver. He's the one that caused the fall in the first place. Now he's going to pay. Lucas walks toward Luffy with his fist raised. Lucas, stop. He's not a bad person. Please. Henry grabs his brother's arm and tries to pull him backwards. Lucas stops for a moment and looks back at Henry. Why are you defending him? He put our town in danger. He put you in danger. How can you possibly forgive him for everything he's done? They are all silent and only the crackling of flames is heard. Because he didn't want to hurt anybody. He's a good person, Lucas. I can tell. Luffy stares at the elder. He watches as Lucas tenses up, then sags in what appears to be defeat. "You're a handful, you know that, right?" Lucas says, ruffling his little brother's hair. Henry giggles delightedly. The flames are smaller now, as the townspeople are doing everything to get rid of them. The air is clearer where the trio stand, and they don't cough as much. "I don't understand." Lucas turns back to Luffy. "Why would you do all of that and not want to cause any harm?" Luffy chooses this moment to stand up. His hood shadows his face, so they can't recognize him. "Because it's to find someone who can help me," he answers. "Then get the Marines to help. Surely you don't need to go through all this trouble to find one single person." Lucas says in disbelief. Luffy shakes his head. "This is something those dumb Marines can't help with." He pouts. Lucas suddenly realizes how young this person seems. "If it's really important to me, only my brother can help." "Brother," Henry says shyly. Luffy grins. Suddenly, gunshots go off and they all duck to the forest floor. "It was the person messing around with the flags that did this. I saw him throw a flaming rock from my window," someone yells. "He must be nearby. Men, head for the docks. Don't let him get away," says a guard. Most scamper off to the port while others remain to search the forest. "I need to get on that ship and fast," Luffy thinks. He moves to get up, but there is crashing of men's boots all around them. Maybe he took those kids that landed in the forest too. All three can hear one of them say, "I hope they're all right. I'll beat that damn hooligan if I see he's laid a finger on them," another says. Luffy tenses at the menace in his tone. Something prods at Luffy's side. He turns to Lucas and Henry questioningly. Lucas leans in close to Luffy. "We'll make a distraction. You go on ahead." Luffy blinks at him. "But why would you help?" he whispers back. Henry giggles quietly beside Lucas. "It's because you need to find your brother. I would do the same if I needed Lucas's help." Lucas and Luffy smile at Henry. Luffy nods firmly. "All right. I'm relying on you." He rolls under a nearby bush as the other two stand up from the ground. Anybody there?" Lucas asks innocently. "It's scary in these woods alone," Henry says with fake worry. The crashing is louder this time and Luffy ducks down further. "Are you boys okay? Did the fire hurt you?" A few men emerge from the bushes and the first kneels down to the brothers. Henry shakes his head exaggeratedly. "It didn't get me that bad, but the meanie who grabbed me ran away over there." With childish tears running down his face, he points in the opposite direction of the port. Luffy struggles to hold his laughter. These guys are hilarious. "Don't worry boys, we'll get him. Jackson, take these kids home. The rest of us will pursue the villain." The men run in the direction Henry directed while Jackson ushers them home. They both look back and smile when Luffy winks at them from his spot. When they are gone from sight, Luffy crawls out of the bush and sprints to the port. "Damn it!" he curses mentally. There are guards everywhere. All around the ports, on every ship, and looking in every direction. Luffy walks around the shelter of the forest trying to catch a glimpse of his transportation. As he steps a little closer, he notices a new poster plastered on the schedule board. All ships are to be inspected. No leaving port until tomorrow after inspection. Anyone WHO refuses to cooperate will be subject to questioning. Luffy looks to the boat he is supposed to be on, but to his disappointment it is full of guards. He's got to leave now. They're clearing the island from head to toe and they will find him eventually. "Wait, is that ship still there?" Luffy suddenly breaks into the forest. He sprints as fast as his injured leg allows, in hopes to catch the clown ship he visited earlier. When he reaches the edge of the forest, Luffy bursts into the clearing. A smile pulls at the edges of his lips. It's still here, but to his dismay he is looking at the back end of the ship. "No, wait." Luffy runs to the leaving ship. He sees that the anchor still isn't pulled up yet and decides it's do or die. Running probably the fastest in his life, he makes a running leap over the water between him and the rope. When his hand connects to the rope, he grips it for dear life while his legs kick at empty air. "Come on." Luffy grits as he struggles to hold on. Luffy flails his legs and barely manages to scrabble on. He is panting harshly and eventually he slowly inches his way toward the deck. When he reaches the peak, he looks over the railing. The clown pirates are running around making preparations to leave. The big-nosed clown waves his arms around commandingly. "Hurry up," There's action in town, so they might have seen us. Someone pull up the anchor now, he yells. Yes, Captain Buggy. Luffy knows then that he needs to move. Quickly and silently, he jumps over the railing and ducks behind an open steel door. Pausing at the entrance, he takes one last peek at the island. The fire isn't nearly as bad as it could have been. It has hardly touched the forest at all. Luffy watches, mesmerized as smoke rises from the barren pole in the center of town, then closes the door behind him. He swallows thickly and shuts his eyes tight, too much like fusha. Pushing his bad memories away, he looks at his surroundings. Wherever he is, it is really dark, but the small hole of light from the window on the door exposes the outline of a staircase leading downwards. Luffy cautiously steps to the bottom deck, wary of the darkness around him. At the end of the stairs is another steel door. When Luffy pulls it open, he is met with what appears to be the cargo hold. The moon is shining directly into the windows along the wall, illuminating the room. Boxes and barrels are stacked from floor to ceiling unevenly and messily. Luffy grins widely when he sees a barrel of apples next to the window. He trots over and plops on top of two crates piled next to it. Stretching his legs out, Luffy grabs an apple and munches it leisurely. Upstairs, he can hear the thumping of drunken footsteps dancing to loud music. Luffy grumbles and bites his apple. He wants to party too. After eating enough apples to ease his hunger, he pulls out his bag of medicine. He downs the bottles in seconds and sticks his tongue out in disgust. Blech, he says out loud, packing the bottles away. Then he notices the bandages sitting snuggly at the bottom of the bag. Luffy realizes he hasn't changed his bandages in a while, so he unwraps his old dirty ones. He's not going to lie, it looks pretty red. The stitches feel a little sore too, but he supposes it's normal after the large wound he received. Luffy touches the nub and notices it feels a little numb to the touch. Perhaps it is the work of the medicine. He shrugs and starts wrapping it up again with fresh bandage. Just as he pulls the last knot tight, a loud boom startles him. A massive crash and rattle reverberate throughout the ship. The cheers from upper deck suddenly turn into shouts when another boom is heard. This time, something crashes through the cargo hold. Luffy jumps up on a crate on the far wall. A gaping hole is created right at the place where he was just sighting. Water pours in at a rapid rate and floods the floors. What the oh no? Luffy wobbles on the crate as it starts to float along with the rest of the cargo. He leans against the back wall, trying to regain his balance. One bad fall and he's done for. Once he's stable, Luffy carefully leans away from the wall and gets in a balanced stance. He jumps onto the box closest to him and repeats the pattern until he meets the door. It is slightly ajar from the cannon attack earlier, so Luffy pushes it open while balancing on a barrel. Most of the stairs aren't drowned in water, so Luffy hops up onto the dry portion. As soon as his feet touch the steps, he bursts onto the open deck. It's a frenzy. Clown pirates are running in all directions, setting up cannons and patching up the ship. Nobody spares him a glance as they sprint all over the deck. Another whistle pierces the air and something lands into the water next to them. Luffy grips the wall as the ship heaves to the side. Several crew members lose their footing and slide across the deck. Luffy looks out into the darkness but can't see what is attacking them. Another boom sounds and a flash of light projects off the water. Then he sees a pirate ship ahead of them. The cannon heads to the enemy ship but lands just short of the stern. The pirates growl in frustration and scramble even harder to load the cannons. Luffy feels a slight panic. He can't have the ship sink. He can't swim. Even rowing out on an escape boat is out of the question with one arm. A sloshing from behind has Luffy turning around. More and more stairs are being covered in the water from the newly Kai don't know they were hit. I've got to tell them before this thing goes down. He realizes. I can't let them know I'm here though. They'd kick me off the ship or kill me. A short clown pirate walking rather unsteadily passes in front of Luffy, obviously still drunk from their previous party. He's wearing colorful striped harem pants and a bright blue turtleneck sweater. He has an overly large polka dot top hat, big yellow shoes and a red curly wig. Obviously the poor soul can't take all the action happening around him and he passes out face first on the deck. Luffy immediately grabs the fellow and drags him behind a wall. A few minutes later, Luffy emerges wearing the costume. It's a little baggy, but it'll do. He chooses to leave his cloak on though to hide his missing limb. Luffy steps back out into the havoc, leaving the unconscious and almost naked man on the ground hidden. Luffy runs around deck until he sees their captain. Boonie, no, Buggy, yes, Buggy, standing on the higher deck giving orders and listening to reports. Luffy pulls the wig further down his face to keep it hidden and stumbles over his big shoes to Buggy. Captain Buggy. I have something urgent to report, Luffy yells. Captain Buggy turns to him with a big sneer. Well, get on with it. What's wrong? He screeches back. The cargo hold has been hit by cannon fire and is flooding fast. We'll sink if it's not fixed soon. Sir, Luffy adds for emphasis, saluting. Buggy turns to two men running across the deck. You two, go gather more people and patch up the hole on lower deck. Now, you go too. Luffy jumps when he is addressed. I'm not going to let a simple hole sink us. If we go down, it has to be as flashily as possible. But of course, they can never sink us because I am the strongest pirate in all the blues. Yahahahaha. Buggy jumps down from his perch and splits apart. His body parts, except his feet, fly off of the ship and head to the enemy ship, Buggy cackling the whole way. Luffy marvels at the power with starry eyes, but one of the clowns tugs him towards the storage room. All three scamper off, but when they round the corner Luffy stops and backtracks. He replaces the clown clothes for his originals and throws them overboard. Then he tosses the drunk pirate overboard with a life buoy. Luffy looks around his hiding place and is relieved to see that the Buggy pirates have fixed the hole and removed most of the water from the storage room. Hey, do you recognize that guy? Luffy stiffens when a pirate asks his companion. He glances at them and they are indeed looking in his direction. Luckily, another cannon shot distracts them and they go off running to help. Luffy runs to a place with better cover. It's a small space between the captain's quarters and the main mast. He sits snugly between the two and observes the fighting. Luffy breathes a sigh of relief hours later when the Buggy pirates pull through and the other ship sinks. The crew cheers in unison as Buggy flies back to the ship with a shit-eating grin. No one can defeat Captain Buggy, strongest pirate in all of the blues, he declares. Everyone chants Buggy's name. It's time to party. The crew cheers even louder, and a party is set up faster than anything Luffy has ever seen before. Everyone is beginning to wind down again and Luffy decides he needs to find someplace else to go. So when no one seems to be looking, Luffy climbs up the main mast and jumps onto the abandoned crow's nest. He lays down on his back and allows his legs to dangle off the sides. Luffy sets his arm on his stomach as he watches the celebration unfold. He thinks over the events of his busy day and feels a bit overwhelmed. What if this plan doesn't work? What if he's just wasting time? But then he shakes his head to rid all of his self-doubt. This will work. He'll see Ace again. He won't fail. Luffy sighs and looks up at the stars. He can do this. Right here. Right here. Get your newspaper here. Big headline. 6 Whitebeard flags shot down in 1 month. That's right folks, 1 month. And the culprit has not been caught. Read all about it here. Luffy reads his own newspaper. He's been listening to the salesman and the shocked reactions of the citizens for a while now. He places the paper delicately on his lap and selects another cracker from his bag. When he crunches on it, crumbs fly off the sides and fall on the ground. Previously gathered seagulls flock his feet in hopes of getting a piece of the tasty snack. Luffy watches the squabbling seagulls in amusement, then picks up the paper again. From what the article says, it seems that they've picked up on the fact that he hitches rides from merchant ships and that he's been going along the islands in order. He grins to himself. Anytime now the Whitebeard crew will come along and find him. Though, he's upset it's taking this long. But it won't be far away anymore. He most definitely has their attention now. Now that the newspaper is out, Luffy figures, people are going to be much warier of stowaways on their ships. That goes for pirates too. They will look for the first opportunity to send him in for some sort of reward. Luffy tosses the paper aside and stretches his sore shoulders. He's been squeezing in some training between trips to improve his aim and accuracy. This entire expedition has made him weak, and he can't fall behind. Luffy puts another cracker in his mouth and stands up. The seagulls scatter into the sky, cawing all the while. He watches them for a moment, then turns around, smirking. He walks into town, shuffling the matches in his pocket. "Pops, it's getting out of hand. Someone is definitely sending a message." Marco looks up to his father and Captain Whitebeard with a newspaper clutched in his hand. "You're right, my son." Whitebeard responds. "We've had too many of our crew away on missions to handle this one, but now we can take action." Marco nods and crosses his arms. "It's probably someone who wants to challenge us, Yui. Though I have to admit, this person is really adamant on getting our attention." Whitebeard takes a swig of his sake. "If I'm right, this challenger has been going in a line pattern. They are leading us straight to them. I don't know whether they are stupid or smart, Yui." Marco snorts. Whitebeard chuckles and stands up. The wooden deck creaks under his massive weight. "Marco, take Thatch, Izo and Ace with you on this mission." "Actually, Pops," Marco scratches his head tiredly. "Ace is still away on his mission for the time being. When we called, he said something about some giant lizard and hung up." Whitebeard laughs and it booms through the room. "Gurararararara, alright my son, just take Thatch and Izo then. That should be enough to take care of this issue." "Alright Yui. We'll leave right away," Marco says, and he goes outside to tell his brothers of their new mission. Luffy is screwed. He's currently running to the docks, praying that some ship is leaving this Oda-forsaken island. Luffy runs through the boxes piled high under the orange torchlights. He turns a corner and ducks down between two large rocks. Behind him, people are yelling and running everywhere. Luffy just sinks to the ground, fighting to keep his eyes open. He has to wait until they leave. How did he land in this mess? Well, it all started when he set the flag on fire. Luffy had tried to get around the guards by pretending to be a merchant, much like his and Ace's trips to sell crocodile skin. But the guards had figured out his intentions and attempted to catch him. Now he's been running around practically all night, dodging guards and looking for a way out. He sighs and leans further onto the rock, but a cracking sound has him sitting up again. Luffy takes out his paper bag and his face immediately turns into a scowl. Damn it! He flips the bag upside down and morsels of glass and liquid slip out. The bag was jostled too much while he was running and now everything is destroyed and unusable. Only one jar remains intact, but the contents are low. He packs it away anyway. Saviour rests his head against the rock and breathes heavily. His energy is sapping away like he just got his cuff on again. That medicine was nullifying the drowsy effects of sea stone, but without it he's back to being weak and tired. I've got to clear my head, Luffy tells himself. Keep going down the port, there has to be an open ship. He strains his ears for any more footsteps, but they have all gone. Carefully, Luffy jogs on the silent docks. He's extremely open but no one comes to investigate. Up ahead he can see a gathering of the people after him. Luffy ducks behind a brick building and peeks at them. It's too far away to hear anything, but he can tell that they're arguing with someone. One of the men from the group breaks off and charges the person they're arguing with. Several of his companions hold him back with struggle while the other man just stands there with an angry sneer. Then he spins around and waves his hand dismissively at them. None of the group look pleased, but they move elsewhere. Someone else pops out of nowhere and talks to the remaining man. They converse for a while then board their ship. Wait, ship? Luffy distracts his eyes from the men to the large wooden vessel. A pirate ship, he thinks excitedly. Luffy manages to get closer and hides behind a cart. At this point more men have come off the ship to get more cargo. Nothing can make Luffy happier than to have a nice long nap right now, but he flicks his head to stay awake. Stupid cuff making him exhausted. Luffy looks around the area but there aren't any openings he can use to get on the ship. If he runs, he'll be too open and there are way too many pirates around. Also if Luffy is spotted, he doesn't think he'll have the energy to escape. From the same direction the crowd left in, he hears voices quickly advancing. Are they coming back? He wonders, startled. I've got to get out of here. Luffy searches desperately for an escape route when his eyes land on two pirates who are transporting a wagon onto the ship. The cart has a brown tarp over it to hide the contents, but Luffy can see a golden sheen underneath. Luffy hops on the spot to psych himself up, then runs as fast as he can when the pirates are distracted. Then he dives at the wagon and slides under the blanket. The coins immediately clink as they shift under Luffy's weight. He slithers further into the pile to hide himself completely and flinches at the noise. He lay there silently as the wagon jolts on its old wheels. As it rolls along with Luffy inside, he notices their pace slacken. "Did this thing get heavier or something?" one of the pirates complains. The front of the wagon shifts upwards and they wheel on at a faster pace. "I'll help ya," the other one responds. "Damn, those villagers are coming back again. They're such idiots, assuming we hid the guy they're after. Even made us stay out late for damn inspection. We're pirates. If we weren't all friendly with Whitebeard, I would love to ravage this town." The cart suddenly hitches and the terrain is smoother. Luffy hears the creaking of a wooden deck, indicating they are on board the ship. "We've got to go. The villagers are coming back to interrogate us," the pirate says, setting the cart down. "Yeah, we shouldn't risk them getting on our bad side. More than they already are. Ha 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 ha." The two leave the wagon and their voices gradually fade away. Luffy lays uncomfortably in silence, which is rudely interrupted by a growling in his stomach. If only this was a food cart. He pouts. A few minutes later he can feel the rocking of the boat and hear waves crashing against the bow. The pirates have quieted down, but he can still make out their pissed mumblings as they pass by. Luffy settles down on the coins, trying to get as comfortable as possible. He breathes in the metallic scent all around him and closes his eyes, succumbing to the exhaustion racking his brain. How am I going to get out of this now? Luffy is back in the cells. Beside him is Makino, chained up but still smiling through all the worry and pain she's no doubt experienced. He looks ahead. There's the mayor and bandits. Deiden keeps grinding her teeth together, a habit she has picked up to keep the tobacco cravings at bay. Whoop Slap fiddles with the cuffs on his wrists and glances worriedly at the very still form beside him. Luffy looks down at himself. His clothes are very worn and have several holes and tears. The sea stone cuff is still there, sapping Luffy's energy away and making it harder than ever to do the work he is forced into. Suddenly, a hand grasps his and he looks up at Makino. But he can't see her face. Luffy is sure he can, but the harder he tries the blurrier it looks. Baffled, he turns back to the mayor and bandits. Oddly enough, they look the same as Makino. Actually, so does everyone else in the room. But now all their non-existent gazes are trained on Luffy. Makino says something, but it's garbled and unclear. Luffy searches her face desperately for anything he can understand. Instead, she grasps both of his hands and shakes them roughly. "Hold on, two hands." And it's burning hot. The intense heat tears at Luffy's skin and he cries out in surprise. Magma pours out of the walls and pools on the ground. It flows in continuous stream, coming closer and closer to his chained feet. He struggles against his binds, but they are too strong and he's too weak, too weak. Makino's hands are still grasping his in a death grip. He yells at her to let go, but realizes his voice won't form any coherent words. The magma comes closer to both of them and Luffy inches to the back of the cage, pulling Makino along. But before they can move any further, Makino jerks him forward so that his face is right in front of hers. "You took too long," she screeches. Until now, Luffy has never heard her use that tone in his life. "Now we're all dead. We trusted you but you left us behind." Luffy's heart cries in utter anguish and he tries to tell her. He tries to say he is trying, that every single moment away from them is a moment of agony. He tries to apologize and beg for forgiveness. But nothing comes out. And now she is just screaming at him without a mouth, without a face, and he can't do anything but listen to this damn nightmare. More voices chime in and Luffy sees it's Deiden and the others. They're all saying the same hurtful things as Makino and Luffy realizes dully, at the same time. They're all sitting and the magma finally reaches the top of their hip bones. Luffy screams but the others don't seem to feel it. Makino's nails draw blood on Luffy's wrists, but compared to the incinerating heat on his torso, he doesn't even register it. I'm sorry Makino, everyone." He tries to drown out their words but his voice just sounds like a series of broken sobs. As their words get louder, the magma rises higher until it is up to their mouths. Luffy howls and cries from the mental overload. Then it stops. He gasps in the fresh air and coughs hoarsely. After a few seconds, Luffy glances around him. He's under a flag, a Whitebeard flag to be precise, and it is on fire. "Luffy," said Teen snaps his head around because he can't be hearing that person yet. "Ace," His voice is working now, but he doesn't care. All of his thoughts are on his brother, and how he is standing right there. Luffy stands up and takes a step forward with a relieved smile. But then he stops. Ace's face doesn't look happy at all. His frown is deep and the hate in his eyes makes Luffy still. You destroyed the pride of my crew. What kind of stupid bastard does that? You even left the village behind? Why would I help them? Come on Luffy, tell me exactly why. Ace taunts. Luffy is shaking, but he doesn't know why he feels like this in front of his brother. Because we need you Ace, I need you, huh? Please Luffy, like I would take your word. Such a worthless crybaby who is always a waste of my time. I regret not killing you as a kid. I should have just. Ace slides a finger across his neck. Why are you saying these things Ace? Luffy's voice shakes along with his body. The words hurt him so much and he fears what Ace will say next. Why? Because these things are the truth. Leaving you was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm finally feeling something other than annoyance and loathing every day. Luffy winces and to his horror, Ace starts laughing. Look at you, actually thinking I liked you and would help you. It's pathetic. If only the nobles sold you off earlier so I didn't have to look you in the face again. Ace sneers, and he waltzes closer to Luffy. Stop, I know you don't feel this way. Big silent tears tumble down Luffy's face. He's hurting so much, this is a million times worse than the lava. Shut up and don't talk to me ever again. Ace reaches forward and grabs Luffy's bicep. To Luffy's horror, it starts to crumble away and Ace is just standing there, but his face is gone now. Luffy blinks once, and suddenly everyone from the cages is behind Ace. He blinks twice and their faces disappear. His whole arm crumbles away, and there's a sharp pain to his shoulder. How could you Luffy? You left us to die. This is all your fault. Luffy grips his shoulder and curls into a ball on the ground. He squeezes his eyes shut and tries to block out the screams of hatred. I'm so sorry. Please, please, he begs weakly, burying his head into his knees. When the shouts fade away, Luffy remains curled up on the ground. Then he hears a ticking sound. It's slow at first, but then the tempo builds. For some reason Luffy feels like he has to look up. So when the ticking goes so fast it's a steady stream of noise, he shoots his head up. Ace is there, and he grabs Luffy's face. Luffy. Luffy's eyes fly open and he gasps for air. Did you guys hear anything? Someone asks. He wipes away the tears on his face and forces his breathing to settle. No man, just the ocean. Someone else responds. The tears tumble down Luffy's face again and he wipes at them furiously this time. That's the worst one yet. He thinks shakily. With one last shuddering breath, Luffy settles back down on his stomach. He feels hot, feverish even, and sweat gleams on his skin. He has changed from his previous hiding spot to the wagon that he is currently inhabiting. Honestly, he thought it would be more comfortable than laying on coins, but it turns out it's not much better. Luffy was lucky he didn't get caught. These pirates are highly attentive and he has hardly been able to move let alone change positions all night. Even when the ship docked once, he couldn't escape because they were so high on alert. After being nearly caught twice, Luffy has been more quiet and still than he has probably ever been in his life. As a result, he feels like complete and utter shit. He's so starving and his arm stub hurts a lot. Luffy fears one of his stomach growls will alert the pirates of his presence. But he'll get out soon. He hears the pirates talking about how they're close to shore. Willing himself to forget the nightmare, Luffy gathers his bearings and prepares to spring outside. Line here, it's a very nice night, the stars are shining and the air is warm. Everyone is out on the town, shopping and partying. Lanterns are strung up everywhere and the scent of cherry blossoms flows in the breeze. 3 men walk from a local weapons shop. One has a large pompadour hairstyle and speaks loudly, causing others to shy away from him. The lady man next to him wears a purple kimono and face makeup. He yells at the boisterous man to shut up and proceeds to smack said man on the head. The third man looks relatively calm with his lazy eyes and lacks expression. His hair looks similar to a blonde pineapple and his companions always seem to comment on it. Marco? The pompadour man moans to the pineapple head. What is it now Thatch? Marco replies, clearly irritated. How much longer until we find this guy? I don't know Yoi, that's why we are looking. And less time complaining and more time searching for suspicious behavior. This wouldn't be taking so long. The makeup-wearing man says. But Izu, shouldn't we just wait by the flag until he shows up instead of wandering around without an idea of what this guy looks like? Izu rolls his eyes. If we did that, then it would be obvious what we're planning. So until then, stop acting like a spoiled child. Izu karate chops Thatch on the head and he falls over onto the cobblestone street. Marco sighs and shakes his head at their bickering. Maybe we should check the docks. We haven't been around there much, he suggests. It doesn't take long to get there, just a few minutes at a leisurely pace. As the threesome approach, they notice the many fishermen packing up for the night. The pirates immediately set to patrol the dock. Thatch, for once, remains silent as they look for anything odd. Marco extends his observation haki in all directions and uses his phoenix senses to boost his range. I don't feel anything suspicious, he observes. Everything in his radius seems clear with no unusual activity. Excuse me? All of them look curiously to their left. There is an old man bent down tying his boat to the dock with a thick rope. He has paused in his task but is still knelt down with his eyes focused on Marco, Thatch and Izu. Can we help you, Yoi? Marco asks, expression neutral as they walk up to him. You're all Whitebeard pirates, right? The elder asks, gesturing to the tattoo visible on Marco's chest. That's right, is there something you want? Izu asks, putting his hands on his hips. The old man shakes his head. No, it's just I take it you're all here to catch the brat that's been taking down your flags. He returns to tying his knot. Thatch nods. Yes, you wouldn't happen to know anything about him, would you? I'm afraid I know only as much as the papers tell us. But it's about time you pirates got here. We don't want our only source of protection gone. With a final tug on his rope, the old man stands up. Just then, Marco feels something odd with his observation haki. You guys sense that? He asks his friends. They nod in return and focus their haki on an area further down the docks. Marco pushes his haki until he concentrates on a single vessel. He's on that pirate ship. Suddenly a small figure in black springs out of a wagon on the ship. One of the pirates spots him and slashes down with his sword. Luckily, the figure dodges to the side and jumps onto the docks. Marco notices how he stumbles when he lands. Come on, Yoi, Marco says to his friends. But just as he turns around, the cloaked figure sprints past all of them and heads into the city. I've got this, Marco says, and he chases the figure. The cloaked man up ahead doesn't notice him at first, he's just concentrated on getting away from the scene. But as soon as Marco gains ground, that's when the figure seems to know he's being chased. He ducks into a dark alleyway in hopes to lose his pursuer. Oh no you don't, Yoi. Marco zooms around the corner and is surprised to see the man jumping off of the close walls to gather momentum. Clever, but you can't get away from me. Marco does the same and the chase resumes. The cloaked man has already gotten a head start, so Marco senses his path with observation haki. The commander speeds up when he confirms where the figure is, springing from wall to wall. When he jumps around a corner, the cloaked man finally comes into view. At first glance he's like a fox, swift and fast. But Marco sees how his ankles twist oddly when he lands with too much force and how he sometimes skids across the ground. Before Marco can confront him, the figure looks back quickly, then springs onto the rooftops. He wastes no time bounding from one roof to another at a faster pace. This guy's nimble, he thinks, mildly impressed as he follows behind. Marco lands delicately on the rooftop just in time to see the figure disappear back down into the maze of alleys. Not hesitating another second, Marco dashes on the rooftops and plunges down to where he last saw him. As expected, the figure is nowhere to be seen. At this rate, I'm going to be chasing him all night. Marco realizes with a sigh. I think I'll wait until he tires himself out. To get a better range, Marco goes on the rooftops once again. He closes his eyes in concentration and releases a wave of observation haki. There you are. Marco springs back down and runs on the path towards his target. Once he is about 3 alleys away, he slows his pace to follow the offender, but not so close to be seen. Marco follows him for about 15 minutes, then decides to catch up to the brat. He can't possibly still have enough energy to get away now. Jumping onto the rooftop again, Marco follows along the alley to where the figure should be. But there's no one there. Crap, He's not where Marco had anticipated. In fact, he's not anywhere. Where did you go? Marco wonders, eyes narrowing. He takes a deep breath and once again searches the area with his haki. But Marco can't sense him anymore. Not even a hint of his presence remains. Damn! I got careless. Marco lands on the ground and stretches his senses further. No good, he's out of my range. He clicks his tongue in anger, then walks back through the dark alley and into the city. Marco blinks at the sudden lantern light that invades his eyes. He rubs them for a moment. Partially for relief. Partially to delay going back to his potentially angry crewmates. Then he walks down the street with his hands shoved in his pockets. As Marco passes by, he notices the curious looks directed at him and guesses they're wondering why he barreled through town earlier. When he returns to the port, he is immediately glomped with questions from Thatch. Marco, where is he? Why didn't you catch him? Did he threaten to cook you up and eat your chicken now? He's cut off when a nail-polished hand smacks him on the head. Let the man speak, will you? Izu chides. He turns his unimpressed gaze to the 1st Division commander. Well, let's hear your explanation. Marco sighs in exhaustion and rubs the back of his head. I was careless, Yui. I tried to tire him out, but he got too far away without me knowing. Why didn't you just use your phoenix form? You could have swooped down and nabbed him in no time. Thatch asks, now sporting a large bruise. When we got here, I had a word with the mayor. He told me specifically not to frighten the citizens with my powers at any time. If I did it now, at night, I'd be clearly visible, Yui. I guess that makes sense. He only wants the best for his town. But still, it's making it harder for us to catch this guy. Izu says, sticking his nose up. Sorry about all of this, Yui. Marco apologizes. Izu waves his hand dismissively. Don't worry about it, we'll just stick with the original plan. He always strikes at night, so we'll just stay here until he does. But for now. Izu walks up to Marco and buttons up his shirt. What are you doing? If there's a good chance the offender hasn't seen this mark or recognized it from the different design, then he doesn't know who we are. But he has probably seen Marco's face while he was being chased. He'd know we are after him anyway, Thatch points out. Like I said, Izu says, doing up the last button, if he doesn't know who we are, he'll think we're just a bunch of angry citizens wanting to catch him for ruining our town's flag. Nothing different than what he's used to. Even if he did see Marco's face, it wouldn't matter. He won't think of us as much of a threat compared to anyone else. Marco says, building on Izu's thinking. Izu nods. Exactly. Then when he lets his guard down, it will be the perfect time to strike. But what if he does know who we are? Thatch asks. Izu brushes the stray hairs away from his powdered face. Then he will come to us. After all, he has something he wants to say, no? Line here, 30 minutes ago. Luffy hears the thump of the boat hitting wood and knows the pirates have Doc Edem, totally oblivious to the fact that they have a stowaway hiding pretty much in plain sight. He snickers and squirms forward on the wagon so that his nose almost touches the front. Cautiously, Luffy pulls on his hood and raises his head so that he can peek over the top. The green tarp raises slightly with his head, but not so much to be noticeable. Where's a good escape route? Luffy scans the area around him. It doesn't look too bad. He can probably sneak by. Hey, if only those pirates weren't so damn alert. Not giving the pirate enough time to strike, Luffy springs out of the wagon. Just as his feet touch the ground, another pirate swings his sword down. Luffy swerves to the side just in time and the sword embeds itself in the wooden deck. Get him! Someone shouts. Recovering from his previous move, Luffy leaps over the ship's railing and lands on the docks some feet below. As soon as he lands, a wave of dizziness hits him and everything seems hotter. Luffy totters dangerously to the side but catches himself. The once dull pain on his shoulder is now burning hot and throbbing intensely. Another shout snaps Luffy out of his trance. He whips his head around to see the pirates jumping over the railing after him. On the other side, citizens near the port have gathered to see what is happening. Damn! Luffy pulls the hood down to cover more of his face and sprints toward the city. He runs past the gawking crowd before they register who he is. Just before Luffy reaches the city, he registers passing someone with a pineapple head but zooms by without a backward glance. His breathing is labored, more so than he likes, but Luffy forces himself to run faster so he won't get caught. The citizens still haven't realized who he is, and he wants to get away before they do. Eventually, when he is further into the city, Luffy hears footsteps trailing him at a running pace. Crap! Those pirates caught up. Without a backwards glance, Luffy ducks into the nearest alley and pushes his body further. These walls are pretty narrow. Luffy grins as an idea comes to mind. He kicks off of the wall to his left and then does the same to the right, so he ends up bounding from wall to wall high up in the air. She, it's just like the trees in Mount Corvo, Luffy snickers internally. This method brings up his speed and makes it harder for his pursuer to catch him. Luffy jumps through the alleyways, but suddenly notices how darker they're becoming the further he goes. He wonders about that for a second, but soon forgets about it. Straining his ears, Luffy can hear quiet pitter-patter of the person chasing him. He scowls to the sky through his harsh panting. I've got to get away before I can't see anything at all. Luffy pushes off the walls with all of his might and forces himself to go faster. However, as he turns a corner he realizes how much he can't see. Luffy's foot catches the edge and he immediately loses his momentum. His foot twists against the wall, making him fall and slide across the dirty ground. On a shaky arm he brings himself upright. It's then that the full extent of his exhaustion hits. Sweat pours off his brows and runs into his eyes. Luffy feels something wet on his shoulder but can make a good guess of what it is. He realizes that the darkness is from his own vision, not the alley. But I've got to keep going. He forces himself back up the walls and continues at a pace albeit slower than before. The chase seems to go on forever in Luffy's opinion. Every time he thinks he is home free those steps return, louder each time. So when Luffy stumbles over his feet yet again, he risks a quick glance over his shoulder. To his surprise and disappointment, he can see the figure just a few meters away. Damn it! Luffy looks up and then springs onto the rooftop. I shouldn't be in the open like this for too long. So Luffy dashes over a few rooftops then goes down into an alley again. This time when Luffy lands, there is a ringing in his ears that makes his eyes go wide. On shaky legs, he rises and escapes. Not trusting himself to jump properly on the walls, Luffy decides to run on foot blindly into the increasing darkness. Don't pass out, don't pass out, he screams at himself. I've got to go faster. Somehow his legs speed up and he centers his mind on running, and nothing else. The corners don't feel like they appear anymore. To Luffy it's like he's running in a straight line with the thumping of his heart loud in his ears. Everything blurs at the edges of his vision and eventually he can't make out details because it's so dark. You left us here to die, Luffy grimaces and presses a palm to his ear. I should have killed you when I had the chance. He shakes his head and shuts his eyes tightly. It's just my mind playing tricks on me. Luffy tells himself. The voices aren't real, it's all in my head. Yet the harsh comments keep coming. It's your fault we're stuck as slaves. Ace isn't the devil child. You are. Luffy runs faster, trying to escape the jeers around him. Whitebeard will kill you before you even have a chance to say a word. Who would want a whiny, sniveling, weak brother like you? He speeds up even more. Luffy isn't looking where he's going anymore. Sabo would agree with me. He only tolerated you so he wouldn't have to hear you complain. Just go faster. We hate you and wish you didn't exist. Faster, you should just die. Luffy's feet are suddenly off the ground. He doesn't have enough time to bring up his arm when he skids across the earth, kicking up a mountain of dust. He tumbles across the alley, gaining several cuts and bruises on stray rocks. Eventually, Luffy's body slows and he is left lying on his side. Dust clouds rise from around his still figure. The voices have stopped, and Luffy lays in complete silence. His eyes are closed, and he focuses on filling his lungs with much-needed air. After a while, his head clears enough so he can think straight. Luffy strains his ears to listen for the pirate after him, but he hears nothing. Was there even someone after me? I don't know anymore. Luffy sighs and rests on the ground, just trying to recuperate. The cool ground feels magnificent on his overheating body. He presses his cheek further against the cool dirt, trying to push away the sickness threatening to dominate him. I need the stuff from my bag. Luffy thinks blearily. With a considerable amount of effort, he sits up and drags himself next to a large green dumpster. He groans as his back rests against the grimy brick wall. The dizziness returns from the sudden motion and Luffy feels close to heaving. When the sickness passes, he reaches into his bag for the remaining bottle of medicine. Popping off the cap, he immediately grimaces at the smell. It's almost bad enough to bring his nausea back. Luffy shakes his head and tries not to gag as he swallows the substance whole. Hopefully the small amount of medicine does something for him. The wetness of his shoulder is next on the examination list. He pulls the bandage off and sucks in a sharp breath. The skin is really sore and it swells around the stitches. The liquid that Luffy once thought was blood is actually something yellow, and it oozes from his wound. He promptly wipes it off with the inside of his cloak, then rips a piece off with his teeth. The Straw Hat teen wraps it around his shoulder and secures it tightly. Feeling drowsy, Luffy leans back onto the brick wall and closes his eyes. His stomach grumbles loudly, but for once, Luffy ignores it. All of his money has been lost and he has no energy whatsoever to do a dine and dash. With a groan, Luffy realizes he needs to hit the flag. The sooner he does it, the sooner the Whitebeard pirates will come. But I'm just so tired. His breathing slows and Luffy realizes, with a start, that he can't move anymore. His body is already shutting down from exhaustion, willing him to get some rest. With a quick mental sorry to his friends in Fusha, Luffy falls into a deep sleep under the cover of darkness. Line here mid-EKS out from the top of the buildings, bringing light to the alley Luffy is currently residing. The sun glares on his eyelids, urging them open, but he moves his head away. Luffy's mind bleakly registers something on his cloak and chest. Half asleep, he brushes the unknown thing away with a wave. He sighs in content when the feeling goes away and then relaxes against the wall again. Then it returns, more aggressive, and Luffy frowns. He swats his hand, but this time it doesn't go away. Groaning, he swings harder and this time it retaliates by pushing his hand away. What the? Luffy is done with whatever is disturbing his sleep and opens his eyes. To his shock, the thing on his shirt is hands. They are digging through his pockets trying to find something of value. Immediately, Luffy jumps up with a yell. He refuses to say he squeals, pirates don't squeal, and kicks the raggedy pickpocketer into a building. Luffy immediately runs from the scene. Suddenly feeling compressed, he makes for the first opening into the city. It isn't very far, just a few corners away until he can see the main street. He bursts into the open and breathes in the fresh oxygen that is no longer tainted with must and steel. A few passerbys glance at him curiously, gossiping to their friends. After sucking in as much air as he can get, Luffy calms and thinks of yesterday's events. I was so out of it, now I can't tell when everything stopped being real. He realizes, was someone chasing me? Or was I just going crazy? Another question pops into Luffy's mind. And why was I like that? Did I get a fever? Luffy feels his head experimentally. I definitely don't have one now, maybe it's because of the nasty stuff I took last night. Someone bumps his bad shoulder and mumbles an apology as they walk away. Luffy just bites his lip to stifle a cry of pain. Damn Akainu. Just then, Luffy's stomach growls loudly. He looks around the area for a quick grab when his eyes land on a shish kebab stand across the street. It is bustling with customers and the man at the station is busy handing out the delicious snacks. Luffy sneakily makes his way over to the side, an empty part, of the stand. He glances upwards at the vendor, but he seems occupied with the overflow of customers. Quickly, Luffy snatches the meat off the barbecue when he isn't looking. Grinning to himself, the teen walks away unnoticeably from the crowd. He grins even wider, he hasn't had kebabs in forever. Just before he can sink his teeth into the savory meat, Luffy feels a pair of eyes upon him. He looks up and his gaze meets one of a man with pineapple-shaped hair across the street. Luffy blinks in surprise. The man is quite some ways away, yet he has still managed to spot Luffy's theft from that far. However, the aura around this guy seems kind of familiar, but overall very powerful. Meeting his gaze defiantly, Luffy stuffs the meat in his mouth all at once. He chews deliberately slow, in spoken challenge in his eyes. The man just stares back blankly, not moving an inch. Luffy begins to think he is a statue until two men step beside him. The newcomers don't notice him yet, but judging by the way they interact with each other, Luffy guesses they're comrades. In a matter of seconds, they follow Pineapple Guy's line of sight and start watching Luffy too. Not up to staring down three seemingly powerful people, Luffy ducks back into the crowd. He navigates through the hustle, avoiding stray limbs until he reaches freedom. Their stares unnerve Luffy. He ponders this as he walks onto a path leading to the forest. Are they Marines? The thought has Luffy stopping in place. Did they find out he wasn't dead and sent people after him? Marines can't be on these pirate-protected islands, but maybe that isn't enough to keep them away. Luffy shakes his head. Why hasn't he given more thought to this earlier? Sure, those people have a weird appearance, but that can be all part of a disguise. Maybe the person chasing him yesterday wasn't an illusion and was one of those men. Maybe I'm just paranoid, Luffy says mentally, but the deep look in the pineapple guy's eyes makes a stronger argument. He starts walking again. Luffy doesn't know who these people are, but if they are Marines he is staying as far away from them as possible. Soon enough, the Straw Hatter reaches his destination. The forest is what Luffy considers cute in comparison to his own. The trees are smaller, and the biggest predator here is the size of a small dog. After a bit of walking, he comes across a good-sized water basin. Bushes surround it, offering cover from any onlookers. As a matter of fact, Luffy almost falls into it, but he manages to grab an overhanging branch before it happens. It creaks eerily under his weight and bends, but Luffy swings his feet backwards. His tiptoes catch the ledge and he leans backwards onto the safety of land where he can let go of the branch. Luffy whistles. That was close. Wiping the sweat off his brow, he realizes it's been a while since he last bathed. Being extra careful not to drown, he strips and sits on the edge of the basin. Luffy's straw hat rests preciously tucked under the bushes so it won't be blown away. A good scrub down later, Luffy removes the makeshift bandage on his arm. There's no more pus, which is good, but it's still sore and sensitive. He gently cleans the wound then reapplies the bandage. With cleaning done, Luffy risks lowering himself into the water. Just in case, he ties a vine from his waist to a tree so he can pull himself out if needed. The teen sinks into the warm water with a sigh. The sky above is as blue as can be with birds chirping overhead. A few squirrels scuttle on a tree nearby, stopping on a branch to nibble on nuts. Despite the relaxing atmosphere, Luffy can't help but let his mind wander. When are the Whitebeard pirates going to show up? He wonders idly. Will I have to take down all of their damn flags before they notice? Lying here being on an island that's protected by a pirate is odd, especially if you're the pirate that has to do the protecting. It's like a role reversal. The pirates uphold order, prevent any trouble, while the Marines are the ones they keep away. A weird phenomenon. So when Marco sees the kid swipe a shish kebab without paying, he plays Marine and moves to stop him. However, a glance at the boy's wrist holds him back. On it and clamped tightly is a dark blue shackle with a small broken chain link attached to the side. Most likely sea stone, Marco thinks, recognizing the material and color. I wonder if it's on the other wrist too. But the other arm is hiding in the kid's poncho. He moves his eyes to the straw hat peeking from the kid's hood on his back. It looks vaguely familiar, but Marco can't put his finger on it. Then the boy looks directly at him. Marco has to contain a chuckle at the look of surprise he receives. The kid's childish eyes are blown wide and his mouth forms a silent, "Oh." It's like a switch, the surprised look is quickly masked into a rebellious one as the boy eats the meat. He chews slowly, daring Marco with his eyes to try stopping him. Marco barely muffles a snort. He gets a better look at him now. The boy seems pale and a little too skinny for Marco's liking. A thought that he's a slave crosses his mind just as Thatch and Izu approach, fighting as usual. "Hey, Earth to Marco!" Thatch shouts, abandoning his previous argument. "What are you looking at?" Marco just points his chin forward. They both turn their heads to the kid who suddenly looks very uncomfortable. "Who? Him?" Izu asks, eyes curious. But before his question is answered, the boy slips into the crowd and disappears like a shadow. "Who was that?" Thatch asks, turning his gaze to Marco. The Phoenix's eyes linger on the spot the kid was just a second ago, then back to his companions. "Based on the rough shape that kid was in, I think he may be an escaped slave yoi." Izu hums in understanding. "That's a big possibility. The cuff on his wrist was made of sea stone, wasn't it? So that means he right?" Marco nods. "A slave in the West Blue? Do they even have that kind of market here?" Thatch asks in disbelief. It's pretty uncommon, but not impossible. Someone might have brought him over from the Grand Line. Marco says, a faraway look in his eyes. Or he came himself. Izu says, I don't like seeing kids being forced into slavery, it doesn't sit right at all. If we see that boy again, I want to talk to him and give him a decent meal. Maybe even bring him on the ship. Thatch says, eyes lost in the crowd. Izu smirks. Thatch, that is probably the best idea you've had in a long time. Line here. It's a few hours later, and after taking a much-needed nap, Luffy feels a little refreshed. He has started feeling dizzy again, not to mention drowsy. Although blaming the dizzy spell on his dip in the water, he can't excuse the way his head suddenly flushes with heat. I need more medicine. But first I'll need to make some money. Luffy grumbles a little. He wishes he knew stuff about medicine so he could just swipe it off the shelves without a doubt. Here I thought I liked doing this. And he does like singing, just not today when he feels like crap. So here Luffy is, going into town on a warm summer night in search of a restaurant to sing at. Eventually he finds one with a big stage at the front. When Luffy enters there is already someone up front strumming a guitar. He hums along with the tune, even though he doesn't know the song, and approaches the hostess. She's a nice lady, although Luffy thinks she might be taking pity on him when she lets him sing. You can go after the person up now. In the meantime, have a seat at the bar, she says cheerily, gesturing to the wooden structure next the stage. Luffy grins back. Thank you. Suddenly he's glad he bathed. Luffy doesn't know if they'd let him sing otherwise. He sits at the bar, swinging his legs back and forth. Beside him is a large man hunched over his drink. He wears a large green poncho that is frayed around the edges. Luffy, being the friendly guy he is, wants to say hi. I wouldn't do that if I were you. His head snaps to the bartender in front of him. The man is drying a bourbon glass, and his eyes are focused on the hunched figure beside Luffy. Do what? Say hi? Luffy asks, head tilting to the side. The bartender nods and turns his gaze to Luffy. He's been like this for a while, sulking on his lonesome. I've tried taking to him but he just doesn't want anyone near. Luffy pouts. Then that's all the more reason to talk to him. Oi, Poncho-o-san. He pokes the hunched man. The bartender shakes his head. Don't say I didn't warn you. Then he walks away to serve another customer. Luffy continues to poke his victim. Oi, why are you sad? He stops poking him. Luffy realizes he can hear the guy mumbling to himself. It's so quiet he can only make out a few key words. Couldn't he get me? Need another. Other. Escaped. But where? Luffy's face looks as confused as ever. Where what? He asks rather loudly. The poncho man sits up abruptly, almost making Luffy fall out of his seat in shock. He whips his head to Luffy and stares at him with wide eyes. The teen just stares back, unsettled. O-san? He asks uncertainly. But suddenly the poncho man has a big grin on his face. Not the good kind, mind you. Instead of talking to Luffy, he sinks back into his original position, but this time with an air of happiness and relief. Luffy just looks away from the man, puzzled. The bartender comes back and ushers Luffy to a seat further down the bar. Congrats. You got him to move. The bartender cheers. Luffy chuckles. Yeah, I guess so. Here, you're singing right? You can eat right now if you want. He pushes a steaming steak in front of Luffy. The teen's mouth waters immediately. You're sure? What if I'm no good? The bartender waves a dismissive hand. Just by looking I can tell you're something special. Don't worry about it. Eat up. Luffy grins in signature D fashion. Thank you. He tackles his meal full on, leaving no trace after only a few seconds. Whoa, slow down. The bartender says in mock horror. Luffy licks the plate clean then slides it back to the man. Slow down. But I'm hungry, and if I'm hungry I should eat. Having experienced Luffy logic for the first time, the bartender looks baffled. Soon enough, he breaks into laughter. I was not wrong, you're special alright. At the corner of Luffy's eye, he sees Poncho Man shuffle. A large grin is hidden in his sleeves. Special indeed, he says, words muffled by his arm. Luffy watches him for a few seconds, then turns back to the bartender. You know what, I'll give you a little extra food in your pouch if you sing well, he says, offering a hand. Deal? Luffy smacks his hand just as clapping fills the room. Deal. The bartender nods to the now empty stage. Your turn. Luffy grins and walks confidently on stage. He steps to the center and removes the straw hat from his back. He places it on the ground in front of him and looks at all the people staring at him expectantly. For some reason, he feels several pairs of eyes burning into his body. He looks around the room but can't see anyone who stands out. With a mental shrug, he starts to sing. Luffy chooses a song Makino used to sing whenever she did the dishes. He and Ace would sit at the bar after a long day of training and just listen to her sing. It was very soothing and they would both fall asleep right after the song ended. The memory hits him like a bullet and threatens to choke his words. Thankfully, he refrains from ruining the performance. Makino's voice was the best, it was like angels. No Luffy, he yells mentally. That was. She's still alive. Stop saying things like they will never happen again. You're doing this to save her. To save everyone. He finishes strong, gaining massive applause from the audience. Luffy does a little bow with flourish, then bends to collect his hat that is filled with money. It's then that Luffy notices Poncho Guy staring at him maliciously, clapping slowly. Then he gets up from his seat and leaves the restaurant. Luffy straightens with a troubled expression. All of a sudden that guy just doesn't sit right with him. Off to the side, the bartender waves him over. Immediately brightening up, Luffy jumps off the stage and hops to the bar. Beyond what I expected, kid. Here's what you earned. The bartender digs under the bar and pulls out a pouch. It's got bread and cheese in there, enough to last you a bit. By the looks of you, I don't think you'll be sticking around this town long. Luffy shakes his head, attaching the pouch to his shorts. He dumps the money in his other pocket. No, I've got something important I need to do, he says, slipping the straw hat on his neck. Well, I wish you good luck on your journey. Luffy grins widely. Thanks, see y'all later. He waves, practically radiating happiness. The people here are so nice. Luffy practically skips out of the restaurant. Suddenly, he gets the same sensation that he felt in the market. He turns his head slowly and his eyes widen when he recognizes the three men sitting there. The Marines. Luffy internally freaks. The men seem to notice his gaze on them, and that's when Luffy decides it's time to go. He runs out the door, just as they call out to him. I won't be caught by Marines before I see Ace. Luffy makes a break down the street, revving around corners to get out of sight. A sudden blast of nausea has Luffy tripping. He catches his feet and clutches his mouth with his hand. The street is gray and empty, a thick coat of fog hovers above the ground. I ate too much. But the meal was so good and he was so hungry. I should have known I was going to regret it later. Luffy sucks in a mountain load of oxygen and tries to block out the nausea. Better. Nope. He leans up against a building and breaks into a coughing fit. It lasts for a long time, which surprises Luffy. When it ends, he takes the time to catch his breath, then removes his hand from his mouth. Gross. There's some dark. He wipes it on the ground. A sharp prick invades the back of Luffy's neck. Eyes widening, he scrabbles for it, but his arm feels sluggish. Eventually all the strength fleets him and he falls face first on the ground. Marines, is the first thought that crosses Luffy's mind. Instantly panicking, he urges his muscles to move but they won't budge an inch. No, 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 pure dread fills Luffy's body. His eyes, the only things that function, flick around desperately. Boots appear in Luffy's vision and he looks up. To his surprise, it's the Poncho Guy from the bar. Hello my treasure, he says, crouching down to Luffy's height. His voice is scratchy and high. I thought it would have taken more effort to catch you, but you've made this easy for me. Arms surround Luffy's torso and he is lifted from the ground. He's thrown unceremoniously over Poncho Guy's shoulder, leaving his arm and feet dangling helplessly in the air. Unaware to Luffy, his straw hat slips off his neck and flutters to the ground. I suppose I should introduce myself, Poncho Guy says, walking away with Luffy in tow. My name is Ralph, the slave trader. Luffy's heart thuds in his chest. And you're about to make me very rich, line here. He went this way. Yui, Marco, Thatch and Izu have followed the slave kid from the restaurant. The streets are even more congested with fog, making it harder for the pirates to navigate. This fog is so thick. No wonder there's nobody out here. Izu says, trying to peer through the murk. Did you guys hear him sing back there? It was so sad and beautiful at the same time. Thatch swoons, wiping a stray tear from his eye. Yeah, who knows what else that kid is capable of, Izu comments. We can't let him slip away again, Yoi, Marco says, squinting. This fog is too thick. I can't sense anything. Thatch releases a strangled cry just as hissing splits the air. Can't sense anything. I can't see anything. I feel bad for all the cats I step on tonight. Thatch's complaint dies in the night as they creep forwards. We're sitting ducks out here. Let's just go back to the restaurant until the fog clears up. A crunching sound interrupts Izu's talking. What kind of cat was that? Thatch asks incredulously. I stepped on something. Marco says, bending down. He feels around his feet until his fingers come upon something straw. What is it, Marco? Izu asks. The 1st Division commander holds the object up so all 3 of them can look. That's the kid's hat, Thatch exclaims. He must have come this way, Izu points out. Marco examines the hat in his hands. It's definitely well worn, for starters. The edges are a bit frayed and there are tatters around the top. He flips it with his fingertips. Inside the hat the straw is compressed, indicating it has been worn a lot. It still looks familiar. Where have I seen this? Marco racks his brain but comes up with nothing, to his frustration. A nudge to his shoulder makes him lift his head. What is it, Yoi? He asks absently. Izu rolls his eyes. Stop zoning out. If you were paying attention you would have noticed the fog lifting. Marco looks around, and while visibility is still low, they can at least see along the street. He experimentally taps at his observation hockey. It's blurry, but I can pick up a trace of his presence nearby. Izu closes his eyes and tries to sense it himself. I can't pick anything up. It must be your phoenix senses that can trace him. Marco concentrates on the slave boy. His presence seems dimmed. Another presence, much stronger than the boy's, is overwhelming it. They don't separate at all, but move in unison. Funny, to his knowledge the kid doesn't have a companion. I think there's something up, Yoi. The kid might be in danger. Izu and Thatch stiffen. If he really is a slave, I guess that would make him a target for some people, Izu says angrily, hands reaching for his pistols. A serious look crosses Thatch's face and he turns to Marco. Lead the way. Line here. Can you believe it? I found another one? Ralph paces back and forth on the dusty ground. In one hand is a green snail phone and in the other is the speaker which is now pressed against his ear. Someone says something on the other line and Ralph laughs boisterously, spit flying from his chapped lips. I know, the boss won't even notice. Just a few paces away is Luffy, tied to a thick tree trunk. Right now they are in a secluded part of the city surrounded by low-hanging trees. Nearby is a shabby little shack, most likely used as some sort of base for Ralph. The slave trader had carried Luffy all the way to this location while the Straw Hat teen was still drugged. After tying him to the tree, he had pulled the snail phone from his poncho and called someone unknown to Luffy. Yeah, what are the chances? In the West Blue even? Luffy listens to him babble on. Upon observation he quickly determines that this man is not as terrifying as he seems. If anything, he is extremely annoying. Overconfidence seems to ooze from Ralph in his every action and word. He believes that he has got Luffy good, and that there's no escape for the straw-hatted teen. The thought alone has Luffy pouting. He hates being underestimated. He only got caught by a cheap trick. But the drug is wearing off, quickly too. Eventually Luffy gains feeling back in his limbs. He flexes his fingers and toes experimentally yet discreetly, not letting Ralph know he lost his advantage. Not too far from Luffy's foot is a sharp thin rock. He shoots a quick glance to Ralph, who is preoccupied with talking on the snail phone. Stretching beyond his limits, Luffy's toes almost touch the shard. Come on. Sweat forms on his skin from the effort and he pulls the stone closer just a little bit. Hoo kid, I must thank you for showing up when you did. Luffy hurriedly pulls back into his original position and glares at Ralph. What do you want from me? He demands, feigning helplessness. Well, I was in a particularly rough spot. I captured a devil fruit user in the North Blue and then told my boss I was bringing him back to the Grand Line. We were going to sell it to those celestial dragon fellas. Luffy darkens at those words. Unfortunately, Ralph continues, face turning sad. There was an incident, and my fruit user was lost. I thought I was done for. The boss would surely kill me if I couldn't bring him what I'd promised. The first time you saw me, I was drowning my sorrows in liquor. He suddenly perks up and grabs Luffy's face in his hand, squeezing his cheeks together. Luffy growls, but can't do anything to fight back. But that is when you, my beautiful savior, appeared, Ralph says lovingly, shaking Luffy's head from side to side. At first I thought you were some brat, but then I recognized the sea stone shackle on your wrist. Others who have not seen one before probably think it's some sort of bracelet, but alas, it's not. He releases Luffy's face and Luffy scowls. If that's all, then take it. I don't want it, he says. If possible, Ralph's malicious smirk stretches even further. No, what I want is not the shackle, but you, of course since you are wearing the sea stone it indeed means you are, in fact, a devil fruit user. Am I right? Ralph places a finger on his chin and a sly look crosses his face. Luffy says nothing. Ralph cackles then pulls out his snail phone again. Time to call the boss and tell him I'm coming after all. Luffy just glares holes into Ralph's skull. He has no intention of going back to where he escaped from, so the teen impatiently waits until Ralph is distracted. Yes boss, I will be near the Grand Line shortly. The cargo is still with me too. Ralph speaks into the phone. His tone is eager, excited even. Luffy again attempts to drag the rock closer. This time his toe hooks around the top and he can move it slowly. I'm sorry I took so long. No, I wasn't trying to run away. I was just caught in a storm. Yes, a storm. The rock is flicked next to his fingers. Luffy grasps it and works on sawing the tight rope binding. You don't want any excuses. The bottom of the rope thins. The cut slowly expands as he saws. You want him where? The rope stretches, the stress almost too much for it to stay together. Luffy cuts faster. With the other devil fruit slaves then? Alright boss. Luffy stops cutting. The stone drops from his fingers and lands with a soft thud on the ground. Eyes wide, he turns slowly to look at Ralph. Honestly, he doesn't feel annoyed with the situation anymore. He feels pissed. Others, how many more people are out there like him, who have their lives destroyed and torn apart by celestial dragons? Those users the slave traders have, those people the slave traders have, they probably don't have any family left that can help them. At least Luffy has Ace that he can depend on, those people may very well have no one. Luffy grits his teeth and balls his hand into a fist, rage slowly building. He really wants to punch this guy in the face. What's up kid? Feeling angry? Too bad. It won't help you much where you're going. Hoo. Ralph laughs, skipping in place. I'm going to be rich. I'm going to be rich. The burning anger in Luffy settles into something colder, scarier. Ralph sings on, oblivious to the change in the atmosphere. I'm going to be rich, I'm going to be rich, and it's all going to be because of. A loud cracking sound interrupts Ralph's singing. He screeches and runs out of the way just in time when a gigantic tree falls in the clearing. Dust kicks up and fills the air, blocking all visibility. Cough, what the hell was that? Ralph says angrily, hand covering his mouth. Luffy buries his mouth in his shoulder and closes his eyes to shield himself from the onslaught of dust. So this bastard is the one who took him, says a voice coming from the direction of the fallen tree. The dust settles and Luffy looks up to see three men. Three familiar men, he realizes with a scowl. Was it really necessary to knock down the tree thatch? Says the pineapple head to the pompadour man. Of course Marco. We've got to make a grand entrance to surprise this fool. Thatch gestures to Ralph, whose mouth is open in astonishment. The man wearing a geisha sighs and twirls his gun. Well it worked, but it wasn't necessary, he says in mild annoyance. Come on Izu. I know you wanted to scare this guy as much as I did. Thatch says teasingly. Izu shrugs, but smirks lightly. Hey, they all turn to Ralph, who has gotten over his shock and stands on shaky legs. What are you doing here? He demands. Izu points to Luffy, still tied to the tree. We're here to save the kid. Luffy can barely contain a snort of contempt. Looks like they couldn't keep their marine natures under cover. But a small part of him is fearful. Are they going to save him just to bring him back to Fusha? Something cold presses against Luffy's jugular. With a quick glance down, he realizes it's a long sword. Ralph is the one holding the weapon and he clutches it like his life depends on it. And judging by the faces of the trio, it does. Lower your weapon, or Izu here will shoot you right between the eyes. Marco threatens. Luffy could have sworn he saw neon blue flash in his irises. And no way. Take one step closer and I'll slice his head off. The sword presses further into Luffy's neck, drawing a bead of blood. You wouldn't do that. You need to deliver him to your boss. Izu sneers, clicking the safety off his pistol. What? You've been spying on me. How long have you been here? Ralph asks in disbelief. Long enough to know you're a complete asshole. Thatch unsheathes his sword and Ralph flinches as it makes a sharp, shing sound. I said don't come any closer. Ralph is really shaking now. Even if the sword is cutting him, Luffy's face holds an unimpressed look. What a coward. I'll really kill him. Ralph yells. I don't even need him. I've got plenty more slaves that are worth a lot more than him. Ice-cold fury washes over Luffy. He keeps it hidden carefully under an expressionless mask. Unknown to everyone else, he pulls against his restraints, slowly weakening the rope until they are close to snapping. Marco's gaze flicks over to the boy who has yet to utter a word. Not even his eyes speak, they are shadowed and cast towards the ground. When Ralph makes another movement, Marco focuses back on him, but not without noticing the movement of ropes against the boy. Don't bother faking it. Marco says, voice smooth and eyes like ice. We heard your explanation. Your boss is going to kill you if you don't hand him over. Ralph just glares at them, teeth gritted and head held high despite his situation. A weak man hiding behind a strong facade, pathetic really. So that means you can't kill him, you have no leverage. The clearing turns silent. Marco, Thatch and Izu all stare hatefully at Ralph with their weapons unsheathed. Ralph has gone quiet, his gaze trained to the ground. Luffy's face is hidden completely from view. The trio's eyes widen in surprise when a snort escapes the slave trader's mouth. Then it turns to full-blown hysterical laughter and he is clutching his stomach trying to calm himself. Another burst of chuckles escapes Ralph's lips. I never thought I would be killed by a bunch of no-name thugs. I thought my death would be something a little more dramatic. You don't have to die today. You can give us the boy and live, says Izu. Ralph shakes his head. I'm a dead man either way. If I let him go, the boss will kill me. If I stay here, you'll kill me. He lowers his sword off of Luffy's throat and the commanders relax a little. But if I'm going out, might as well bring one down with me. The trio's eyes widen as he plants a foot on the ground and swings his sword at full strength. Wind splits as it delivers right in the direction of Luffy's neck. Before the pirates can even understand what is happening, Ralph is hurtling across the clearing. He smacks into the fallen tree with a sickening crack and falls to the ground, unconscious. His face is a bloody mess and there is a clear fist imprint in the center. All three look away from Ralph's battered body to the kid who is standing, now free from the ropes. Luffy's fist is raised at his chest. Blood drips off of his knuckles and drips down his arm. No one says anything as he makes his way over to Ralph. When he stands over him, he spits directly on the man's face. You shouldn't have underestimated me. Izu and Thatch gape like fish while Marco shows only mild surprise. That was definitely not what they were expecting. Luffy turns in the direction of the commanders and walks straight for them without making eye contact. They think he is going to jump in their arms, begging for help, but instead, he walks straight past them as if they aren't there. Luffy only pauses to snatch the straw hat from Marco's hand. Marco swears he hears a light growl. Luffy heads for the forest, eager to escape all of it. This day is just too messed up and he's just so damn tired of being mad. Wait, he stiffens as one of them calls to him. This is it. These stupid Marines are going to capture him. Why is it all so unfair? Are you a slave? Not expecting that question, Luffy turns back to the men. He makes sure to keep a safe distance away. So what if I am? Wouldn't you like to care? He sneers, temper flaring. The stress of the night builds up and he can't help but feel angrier. The men look slightly baffled at his outburst. Look Yoi, Marco says, raising his hands in a calming gesture. We just want to help you. Garp's false promises and Marines beating his friends flash through Luffy's mind. His eyes blaze in fury and he can barely stop himself from lashing out at them. Help, What a joke. Like you can help me. They're just going to do the same as Ralph would have done to him. But these idiot Marines think it's justice, which just makes them all the worse. You just got kidnapped. What's to stop it from happening again? That guy was weak. But there are way stronger guys out there who can take you. You're a walking skeleton, kid. We can give you food, then you can come on our ship, says Thatch. Luffy shakes his head and takes a step back. Why does everybody want slaves? Why can't they just let him be free? No, I'll never trust you for as long as I live. I'll never trust anyone, he shouts, pain evident in his voice. Luffy turns back around and resumes his walk into the woods. There's only one person I'll ever trust, he says quietly. Ace. Linear Marco is rooted to the spot as he watches the kid walk away. His spine is straight as an arrow, but Marco can feel the pure rage radiating off of his skinny body. The Phoenix clenches his fists in frustration as the boy's words replay over and over in his head. Won't trust anyone. Shit, kid, what happened to you to be this angry at us? But Marco realizes he wasn't angry at them specifically, but at the world. That cold look in his eyes made Marco shiver. He's 1st Division commander, yet one look made his calm facade break. What scares him is the fact that someone so young can make that kind of expression. The Phoenix takes a step forward, ready to chase the kid and wipe that look off his face when Izu grabs his shoulder. Leave the kid. Going after him will just make everything worse. He's in no mood to talk to us. But if he leaves the island, he'll be okay. If that punch is anything to go off of, I'd say he's pretty strong. Izu says amusedly, trying to lighten the mood. When he doesn't succeed, he sighs. Look, we've been going about this the wrong way. He's noticed we were following him around and felt violated. The kid was a slave, for goodness sakes. The last thing he wants is to be trapped. It's totally natural for him to feel paranoid. What are you saying, Izu? I'm saying exactly what I said before. Leave the kid alone. How would he react if a bunch of pirates abducted him and stole the right for him to choose, just like the beings who owned him? Hearing that just makes Marco want to keep the kid even more, to show him not everyone has to be bad and untrustworthy. He wants to show the kid what freedom is like, what being a pirate is like. He wants to see those round eyes of innocence that were focused on him in the market. He wants to show him how to be a kid again. Guys. Marco and Izu turned to Thatch, who looks very dejected. He won't last out there. Not being that angry. Thatch brings a hand to his mouth. I didn't realize it then, the emotion I was feeling when I heard him sing. But now, I realize I was feeling sadness. That kid is so hurt and it kills me inside. Having so many younger brothers and sisters makes me feel protective of the youngins, you know. He sniffs and wipes his eyes. Oh, Thatch. Izu says, going up to Thatch and placing a reassuring hand on his back. And you know what? What? Those cold eyes and angry attitude, they remind me of Ace. Marco has already realized this, from the moment he locked eyes with him. That is why even if he never sees the boy again, he won't ever forget him. Line here, Luffy crashes through the forest, enraged at those stupid Marines and happy they didn't chase after him. Guess they decided I wasn't worth the effort. His arm and legs entangle themselves in vines and Luffy rips at them furiously for getting in his way. Nearby wildlife hears the commotion and scampers away. It's all their fault I'm like this. They made him think about how Ace isn't here, and possibly too far away to hear his cries for help. What if he's taking too long? Luffy feels the loneliness and helplessness threaten to suck him under. I can't keep going like this for much longer. The difficulty of the situation finally sinks into him. Even Garp wouldn't help him. His so-called justice was the celestial dragons. What if Ace turns him down too? Maybe he already knows that the village is doomed and left him alone. Would Ace do that to me? An array of negative emotions shoots through Luffy. I don't know anything. Would someone just explain to me why this is all happening? Why everybody is so scared and mean? Luffy stops in place and screams to the sky. He runs up to a boulder and kicks it until it reduces to rubble. Then he turns on the nearest tree and punches it as hard as he can. Why? Why? Luffy punches the tree continuously, pretending it's a noble, celestial dragon, Garp, and a Kainu. Someone just help me, I can't do this alone. He socks the tree as hard as he can and it flies through the forest. Luffy stops, panting harshly and standing in a hunched position. Tears fall down his face but he wipes them away quickly. He can pretty much hear Ace and Sabo calling him a crybaby. Then he looks around the clearing, at the result of his temper tantrum. He shakes his head and groans out loud. This rage isn't helping him, it's just taking all his energy. Energy that he could be using to save his village. It isn't like him at all. Taking a deep breath, Luffy sinks against a tree. He closes his eyes and counts back from 10. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. He sighs out loud. That feels better. The frustration, worry and pain has all been taken out on the Marines and Ralph. He reminds himself. Now he has to remember his priorities, like destroying the flag. I've just got to focus my mind on finding Ace and saving the village. Not on all the bad stuff that will make me mad. Carefully, Luffy removes the straw hat from his neck and gazes at it fondly. If I want to be Pirate King, I've got to learn how to handle situations like this. Luffy frowns to himself. I didn't notice I dropped my hat when I got kidnapped. That Marco guy brought it with him, but why? To return it to me? Instead of getting angry at the thought, it merely leaves a bad taste in his mouth. He doesn't want any Marine touching Shanks's hat. Another thing too. Luffy returns his hat to its original place. Then he removes a bandage from his sack and ties it around his arm with the help of his teeth. Everyone is targeting me because they know this is sea stone. If I don't want to draw attention to myself, I need to cover it up. He pushes off of the tree and examines the bandages, which are now on both arm and stub. Luffy blinks for a few seconds, then chuckles to himself. He looks like a mummy. Mummies are awesome. Anyway, Luffy pulls on his hood. I got something I need to do. He sprints through the forest and towards the village. In the teen's pocket are all the materials he needs for the plan. It's the middle of the night, so not one person is outside. Simple torchlight creates limited visibility on the street. Spotted from his time on the pirate ship, Luffy knows what boat he's going to escape on. Even if it takes a while to leave, he thinks he can find a good hiding spot on deck. Just down the street is the flag, sitting flat from no wind. Luffy ducks behind a house so he won't be seen. He looks around for the guards, but the weird thing is, there's nobody defending the flag. Luffy feels suspicious. Every island before this has had at least some form of defense. What makes this one any different? Shrugging, he sticks the matchbox in his mouth and holds the match and paper-covered rock in his hand. He's an expert at this now. The teen peeks out from his hiding spot once again and checks for clearance. Despite the slight chill he feels, Luffy runs out in the open when he sees no one there. This process has to be done as quick as possible. He drops the rock on the ground and with smooth efficiency he strikes the match against the box in his mouth. The match is placed on the rock and it bursts on fire. Spitting the box out, Luffy covers his hand with the cloak and grabs the burning rock. The fire sears his skin through the fabric, yet he does not drop it. He pulls his arm back and closes one eye, aiming right for his target. That's dangerous, Yoi. Luffy drops the rock in surprise and looks behind him, the cloak still covering his face. No way. It's those Marines again. All three are standing there with hard expressions and their weapons out. They came got you, says the kimono one, Izu. He thinks. Luffy's heart thuds in his chest and he gets into a battle stance. They're going to bring me back to Fusha. I won't be caught by Marines. He shouts, getting ready to fight them if necessary. They exchange looks and Marco steps forward. Marines, Yoi? He practically spits. Is that who you think we are? You destroyed our pride and honestly think Marines are after you? Luffy blinks in bewilderment. Not that they can see. Then he realizes, they don't recognize him from before, they just think he's the offender. Then who are you? He demands. Just then, he notices that Marco's shirt is unbuttoned, revealing a tattoo on his chest. It's different, but Luffy recognizes the symbol immediately. The Whitebeard Pirates, and you've caused a lot of trouble for us, Yoi. Finally, something clicks in Luffy's mind and he almost starts sobbing in relief. But it is quickly overtaken by a desperate need to see Ace. Obviously you were trying to send us a message, Marco continues. Would you mind telling us why you went through all this trouble to get us this pissed off? The pineapple head stumbles back in surprise when Luffy grabs his shirt and clutches it. Do you know Ace? He asks, his voice so quiet they can barely hear it. Yeah, we do. He's our crewmate. Luffy's mouth opens in a silent gasp and he clutches the shirt tighter. I need to talk to him. As soon as possible. They stay silent, looking at the now childlike figure attached to Marco. Are you some sort of crazy fan? Izu asks, raising a well-groomed eyebrow. Thatch grunts in agreement. Yeah, cause this messing around with our flag isn't a light matter. Luffy growls in anger, not wanting to put up with this now. I'm not messing around. I need to see Ace as soon as possible. It's really important. He needs to convince them now. If he lets them go, he'll never get to his brother. What do you guys think? Izu asks his friends. Thatch shrugs. Well, we need to bring him to Pops anyway. Plus he went through the trouble of burning our flag just to see us. I think we should take him along. Luffy brightens up and removes his hand from Marco's shirt. Thank you, he says brightly, bouncing on the spot. The Whitebeard pirates are baffled. What is up with this mood change? No problem. My name is Izu. The big-haired guy over there. Hey, is Thatch, and the pineapple hair over there is Marco. Marco remains silent. Got a name? Luffy nods his head enthusiastically. Yeah, it's Luffy. Okay Luffy, our ship is docked over here. Don't think we've forgotten about what you've done, so don't try anything funny. Izu says, twirling his gun then putting it back in the holster. Their boat is mid-sized, it can hold 4 people comfortably. Marco steps over the railing and Thatch follows along. Luffy just stops and stares at the small vessel. Something prods his back. What are you waiting for? Come on. Izu ushers Luffy on board. Do you get boat sick or something? Thatch asks, untying the rope from the dock. Luffy shakes his head and snorts in laughter. No, he says, barely suppressing a laugh. This is the ship I was going to hide on. They all roll their eyes as the boat starts to sail into the rising sun. It'll only take a few hours for us to reach the main ship, so until then you can go rest somewhere Yui, says Marco. It's no smiles from there. Luffy huddles up on a bench at the port side. He wraps his arm around his knees and stares at the water ahead, waiting for the ship to come into sight. After a few minutes Luffy can barely keep his eyes open. He yawns loudly and settles on closing his eyes until he can just see through his eyelashes. Upon observation Luffy notices that the group seems a bit unsettled. It becomes clear when Thatch stumbles over a crate for the 5th time and his friends had to tell him to get some rest. He'll be fine. The teen hears as they walk away. Off to the side Luffy can hear Marco calling someone on his snail phone. Luffy shivers as the cold ocean breeze stings his skin. He curls further into a ball and tries to muster some body heat. Yeah Pops, he's here. There's some garbling on the other end. Well, there was this one thing. But I'll talk to you about it later Yui. It's been a long day. More talk that Luffy can't hear. Is Ace there by the way? We kind of need him, it's important. Luffy's ears perk up. Okay, maybe he'll be back by the time we return. Pops says something else, quieter this time. Alright Yui. Good night Pops. Marco hangs up and sighs deeply. Luffy shivers again and suddenly Marco turns to look at him. Luffy closes his eyes immediately, but he can still feel the powerful gaze trained on him. He stiffens when the footsteps approach and then pause right beside him. Warmth surrounds him and Luffy realizes it's a blanket. He immediately snuggles into the fabric with a heavy sigh. The teen hears a light chuckle, and Marco walks away below deck. Luffy watches him leave with one eye open. When he disappears from sight, Luffy smiles softly and then closes his eyes. Ace has good nakama.